being a gut health specialist, I want to tie it into the gut as well because there's some major things that are happening in the gut, not just the endocrine disrupting effects of these microplastics, but also harmful effects that are happening in the gut that have a ripple effect of health consequences throughout the entire body.
Hello, welcome to the Myers Detox Podcast. I'm Dr. Wendy Myers, and on this show, we talk about everything related to heavy metal and chemical toxicity, health issues caused by heavy metals and toxins. And we also touch on bioenergetics, anti-aging, and advanced topics in health. And today we have a great guest, Dr. Vincent Pedre, and he's going to be talking to us about hidden microplastics and how they're hurting your gut. Dr. Pedre is an expert on gut health, and he's going to be talking to us about how microplastics are ever pervasive in our environment and how they're affecting your gut health, your hormones, and your overall wellness. And they also embed in your brain, in your fat, and your body tissues as well. Really big problem. And these microplastics, they're shed from plastics in water containers, food packaging, and synthetic fabrics, all your Lululemon that you're wearing. And the microplastics have a big impact on gut health. Studies show higher levels of microplastics are in the stool of patients with inflammatory bowel disease. These microplastics also cause dysbiosis, an imbalance of the gut bacteria, and disrupt the gut's mucus layer, lending itself to leaky gut and an underlying root cause of leaky gut. And the consequences of that include poor immunity, food sensitivities, insulin resistance, weight gain, increased risk of chronic disease, and just this whole domino effect of health issues that come from, disrupting the microbiome and causing leaky gut. And we also talk about coffees and how single-use coffee cups are lined with plastic, K-cups, plastic coffee makers also all leach microplastics into the coffee, which you then drink. So really, really interesting show today. And our guest today, Dr. Vincent Pedre, he's the medical director of Pedre in Integrative Health and founder of Dr. Pedre Wellness, CEO, founder of Happy Gut Life. And he's worked as a nutraceutical consultant and spokesperson for Nature MD and Orthomolecular Products. And he's a functional medicine certified practitioner with a concierge practice in New York City since 2004. He's the best-selling author of 2 books on the gut, and he believes the gut is the gateway of excellent health. His newest book is The Gut Smart Protocol, featuring a 14-day personalized gut healing plan based on the Gut Smart quiz, and it's the culmination of years of research and clinical experience as a functional gut health expert. And his newest offering is called Happy Gut Coffee, and it's a clean, toxin-free coffee that you can trust to keep your gut healthy, and you can learn more at happygutcoffee.com. Vincent, thanks so much for joining us on the show.
It's so great to be back. Nice to see you. And I'm excited to have a whole new conversation with you about a topic that I think is becoming more and more important. And it's something that's just been indolent under our noses. And I think just from one day to the next, it's like it has become a huge problem and we need to do something about it.
Yeah, I mean, we need some awareness around microplastics. And, when you look at our food, even eating organic food, everything is in plastic. You get your vegetables and you're putting them into plastic, and it's just pervasive. It's just everywhere. You see the pigs are being fed microplastics, ground up garbage in their food. And it's unbelievable. It's in the fish. So why don't you just give us a little bit background about microplastics and some of the issues surrounding that?
Well, first of all, microplastics are sheared off pieces of plastics that we're getting exposed to through water containers, food containers, all sorts of things, even in fabric. So some of the more synthetic fabrics, the polyester, actually have microplastics in them. And it's funny because I was listening to NPR the other day and they were talking about the plastic worldwide plastic problem because the United Nations was trying to come out with a resolution that was being led by Rwanda to get more countries to mandate the recycling of plastics. And there's actually a push against recycling plastics, if you can imagine from the industry, plastic comes from the petroleum industry, right? And it turns out that it's actually in some ways, like you would think that, there's been such pushes for recycling around the country. Recycling is not cheaper than just producing new plastic, which is scary. So only 30% of plastic gets recycled. The rest of plastic just gets chucked. And then there's a huge incentive, you can imagine, from the industry to not recycle, to just use new plastic. And the fact that it's actually cheaper just for them to continue to produce plastic rather than recycle it. It's really a scary proposition when you look at how much plastic is in the oceans, microplastics getting into fish. It's actually quite sad. Like I grew up in Miami, and the water now seems a bit cleaner, but there are times when I go in the ocean and I'm seeing like a piece of something that looks like it was maybe part of a bottle that's now been ripped up into pieces, and you just see like a little piece of plastic floating in the ocean. And you can imagine that it's getting into our seafood. So these microplastics pose a huge problem, not just directly to us, but through our food chain, like you were mentioning.
Yeah, and it's I've read some things about how when you even wash your clothes, most of which are plastic now, they're just made with plastic, petroleum-based threads. All those little pieces get washed into the water and then washed out into the oceans, and the fish think that they're food and eat them, and our fish is horribly contaminated with plastics.
Yeah, there's actually a new blood test that I just became aware of, that the company reached out to me because they saw that I had been talking about plastics. And there's a test in development that started in universities and now is going to become available to everyone, where you can check your plastic. You can do a finger stick to check plastic exposure, microplastics in your bloodstream. I still have to sit down and look at the research and see, how validated this is, because there's one thing to know about microplastics is that microplastics are endocrine disrupting chemicals. And because they are fat soluble, it's very possible that a lot of microplastics, they're getting buried in our brains, are getting full of microplastics, our organs. So I'm not even sure that, like, if you find microplastics in circulation, a lot of times these types of toxins, it's going to tell you about ongoing exposure, but it might just be the tip of the iceberg. It might not tell you how much is already in your body and is being retained by your body. And it's doing things like scrambling your hormones, messing up your mitochondria, affecting your energy, your hormone balance, leading to all sorts of things. Like you wonder, like, why is there so much infertility in the world? Why do so many people now need IVF to have babies? What's happening with our hormones, with our fertility, or even women going into menopause early on, like in their 20s and their 30s? Like, why is all of this happening? We have to look at the toxicity in our environment as one major factor. And I also, being a gut health specialist, I want to tie it into the gut as well, because there are some major things that are happening in the gut, not just the endocrine disrupting effects of these microplastics, but also harmful effects that are happening in the gut that have a ripple effect of health consequences throughout the entire body.
So, for anyone listening that really wants to detox their body, go to heavymetalsquiz.com. I created a quiz for you. It only takes a couple of seconds. Based on some lifestyle questions, you can get your toxicity score and get a free video series that answers all of your frequently asked questions about how to detox your body. Check it out, heavymetalsquiz.com.
Yeah, so you're an expert on the gut. You've written a book on gut health. And so talk to us about how these microplastics affect our gut and disrupt our gut microbiome.
This is what the research is showing. There was a study done looking at patients with inflammatory bowel disease, and they were just asking the question, do patients with inflammatory bowel disease, which could be people with Crohn's disease, colitis, ulcerative colitis, do they have a different amount of microplastics in their stool compared to normal individuals that don't have this? And the answer was yes. People with inflammatory bowel disease have much higher levels of microplastics in their stool. Now, you get into an argument like chicken or the egg, like are the microplastics, because they're present there, are they causing inflammatory bowel disease? We don't have that. We just have an association. We don't have a cause and effect relationship. But we see these things and we start thinking, what could be going on here? So they've done other studies. They've looked at what happens to the gut of zebrafish when they're exposed to microplastics. And they found that it causes shifts in their gut microbiome where certain bad bugs tend to propagate. It causes what we call a dysbiosis, so an imbalance between the good and bad bugs in the gut, and also disrupts the mucus layer of the gut, which then leads to leaky gut. So, and once you have leaky gut, once you have dysbiosis and you have leaky gut, then you have basically the floodgates for inflammation have opened up. Now, how is that relevant to us as humans? Well, if you have dysbiosis, if your gut is leaky, then a lot of inflammatory substances can get into your circulation from your gut. And what that causes is insulin resistance, which can be pre-diabetes or it can turn into diabetes. It causes more fat accumulation in the middle. So you might be wondering, like, what am I doing? Like, I'm not doing anything different, but I just keep putting on weight and can't seem to get it off. If that's you, you have to think about, well, what's happening in your gut and what could be the different factors like. And I think this is a big one because people are getting exposed to microplastics on a daily basis. And for the most part, they don't even know or they're not thinking about it because microplastics are infused into everyday behaviors that we consider to be normal. I hope that's a glass water bottle.
It is glass. You can hear it.
Okay.
It's glass. I don't do
Speaking
the
of microplastics and
yes.
ways to avoid, because I mean, one of the bigger exposures is drinking out of plastic water bottles. And if you just don't know when that bottle that you're picking up at the supermarket, how many temperature changes it went through before it got on that shelf. And every time that bottle is heated up, if their temperature is, in the summertime, the temperatures can be in the 90s. And I don't know if you've ever been in the back of a UPS truck or a FedEx, they get pretty hot, or the back of any truck during the summer. They're not air conditioned for the most part. And so whenever the temperature rises, there's going to be more leaching of plastic particles into the water. But that's not the biggest exposure that people get on a daily basis. I think probably one of the biggest exposure, aside from like makeup and other products that have petroleum, the biggest exposure is really drinking coffee out of those to-go cups that are lined with plastic, because if they were just made out of paper, the liquid would just seep right through. So they have to be protected on the inside. And when that hot liquid hits that plastic lining, it's going to release little shards of microplastics that then you're drinking through the plastic lid that's on top of it. So, I mean, I don't know how much better this is, but they calculate that people's exposure to microplastic is like eating a credit card per week.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, when you think about it, they did new research on plastic water bottles that there's 250,000 microplastics and nanoplastics in the water that you're drinking. It's incredible.
It's a bit disconcerting,
Yeah.
because when you think of it from the macro perspective of what's happening to our health, how people are gaining more and more weight, more people are becoming diabetic. 2 out of 3 children are at risk for diabetes and being overweight. And you have to think, like, this is not just genetics, this is environmental.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
exposing ourselves to these things.
Yes. And like you mentioned before, that the microplastics are in our tissues and may not be readily detectable in the blood. It's the same thing with heavy metals and chemicals. same problem. A lot of it's in our brain, our fat, our tissues, and not just readily available to be seen on a test. So you can do some indirect testing and get good info. But let's talk about some of the long-term consequences of having these microplastics affecting our gut, inflammation, possibly leaky gut. Can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, if you think about the domino effect that happens, and I talked about in my last book, The Gut Smart Protocol, anything that disrupts the gut microbiome, that basically disrupts the balance in the gut ecosystem, the ecosystem being the most like richest community of microbes in the body live inside our large intestine, up to 100 trillion organisms, anywhere between 1,000 to 2,000 different species of microorganisms. When you go in there and you disrupt that and then create favorable conditions for pathogenic bacteria to grow, those bacteria are going to be producing things that increase inflammation in the body. On top of that, when you have dysbiosis, when you have this imbalance in the ecosystem, the next domino that falls is your gut border. So the gut border is just one cell layer thick. It's connected by these tight junctions that keep the cells tightly connected together. And when you have insults like microplastics, antibiotics, stress, eating too much sugar, eating too many processed foods, leads to dysbiosis. The dysbiosis then is going to cause the tight junctions to separate. So then you get these tiny little holes in between the cells. And that's what leaky gut is. Leaky gut is like an increase in the space between the cells that allows things that otherwise had to go through the gatekeeper, which is the cell, now can just basically get through. And they get into the body, they increase inflammation, they activate through a toll-like receptor. It's called TL4. It's an inflammatory cascade that's found in cells like fat cells, the pancreas, muscle tissue, brain tissue. So people think that they're just getting old. Like it's just a normal part of aging, gaining weight, feeling mental fog, not being as sharp mentally, feeling more achy, like harder time recovering from workouts. All of this can be coming from inflammation in the gut. It's affecting your body's ability to resolve inflammation. What does it lead to? It leads to weight gain over time. It leads to pre-diabetes, or we call insulin resistance. Eventually, it can lead to diabetes, but it leads to basically things that don't necessarily kill you immediately, but they lower the quality of your life. And they're also shortening your lifespan and your health span at the same time.
Yeah, and when you have leaky gut, you are more prone to immune health issues, food sensitivities, not to mention that gut dysbiosis is dramatically impacting your immune system overall. You're more prone to infections. It's just, you need your gut bacteria to make neurotransmitters, to make vitamins. I mean, there's this whole host, this domino effect of problems that are stemming from, in part, from microplastics in the gut.
Yeah, and the person doesn't realize that, maybe also hormonal problems or, even like perimenopause, hot flashes, like imbalances in the ratio of estrogen to progesterone, because a lot of these substances, the microplastics, they're estrogenic substances. They're what we call xenoestrogens, or estrogens that come from outside of the body, but they're able to bind to that estrogen receptor. And sometimes they bind to the estrogen receptor in a way that is stronger than our own estrogen. So then we're getting overstimulated, overestrogenized, and that leads to a whole host of problems with the menstrual cycle, excessive bleeding, prolonged menstruation. And we're seeing this in younger and younger women that we shouldn't have been seeing this in. And I think a lot of it has to do with these changes. And microplastics is one piece of the puzzle of many other toxins that we're getting exposed to. But I think it's an important emerging one because it's not going away. the industry keeps producing more and more plastic. And really, the only way we can change this is by changing our buying behavior and just saying we don't want plastic, or
Yeah.
we want to minimize our exposure to plastic. And there's a lot of different strategies. They take a few extra steps sometimes to think about, like, your purchasing behaviors, or even just the way that you go to a coffee shop and get coffee. But if you make these changes, it can have such powerful effects on your overall health, because it's almost like the micro habits that we do every single day have this big impact on our health. And in the same token, the little changes that we can make on a daily basis can also have that big dramatic impact on improving our health.
This show is brought to you by Bon Charge, and I want to take a minute to tell you about one of their amazing products that I'm absolutely in love with. So, there's something I've been doing for about 10 minutes a day, and it's wearing a face mask. But it's not just any face mask, it's this Bon Charge red light face mask, and it's essential to my nightly skincare routine now. And believe me, red light therapy really works. It's well established in the research to improve the appearance of your skin. And how it does that is it penetrates deep into the skin to boost collagen production. It reduces the size of your pores. It reduces inflammation and it eases the signs of aging. Bon Charge's red light face mask makes it so easy to take care of your skin. It's kind of like a mini spa session every night that I'm doing. It can be used easily at home. There's no cord, so you can wear it while you're doing other tasks. Plus, the mask is totally painless and it doesn't heat up, unlike some other beauty anti-aging treatments. Bon Charge's red light face mask has been a game changer, and it's part of my everyday skincare routine now. And I'm seeing such great results already from using this mask. My skin is more clear, it seems more plump and fresh and juicy, and my redness and dark blemishes are fading. So there's a very special offer for all of my listeners. Right now, my listeners get 15% off when you order from boncharge.com and use my promo code Wendy at checkout. So this discount applies site-wide. So that's BONCHARGE.com. And you'll also get free shipping and a 12-month warranty. So go now to get this exclusive offer. That's boncharge.com. And with promo code Wendy, you get 15% off. This is one of my secrets to super healthy, young looking skin. I'm trying to reverse the clock. I'm trying to do everything I can to anti-age. And this is one of the secrets in my toolkit. Yes, and you mentioned before about the single-use coffee cups, and I want to go back to that for a second because so many millions of people every day are going to a coffee place and drinking the hot plastic, the hot, the liquefied plastic essentially from the hot coffee that's going in their coffee cup. Can you talk a little bit about that? And there's the same problem with coffee pods and any kind of plastic coffee maker as well. I mean, there's a lot of different uh problems that people need to troubleshoot. They need to rethink their coffee habits.
Yeah, because I mean, we've become a culture of convenience over health. And so, like, it's a little extra step, but carrying your own steel-lined coffee tumbler to go with you to the coffee shop. And actually, you pay a little bit less for the coffee when you have them make it in your own tumbler rather than use one of their cups. That's one way to reduce your exposure. But a lot of people have K cups or Nespresso machines at home, and they love the convenience. The thing is that, one, you're not getting the best quality coffee because the hot water is going through it really fast. So it reduces the antioxidant extraction from the coffee bean. But also these cups, these K cups are lined with plastic as well. So it's the same problem. And then if you really want to get deep into it, then you have to think that the parts of the machine are also plastic lined. And when the hot water is going through them, you're also getting exposed to microplastics through there as well.
Yeah, and I also I don't like I'm a coffee fanatic, so I'm very very picky about my whole coffee routine every morning. And that same thing goes for the paper liners. I mean, who knows what's in those products? Certainly non-organic cotton as well and wood. But yeah, you're losing all the antioxidants as well when in the oils that have all the antioxidants when you're filtering through the paper filter. And just the
Yeah.
plastic, I don't get the whole plastic coffee makers either. The whole thing's plastic and the hot water's in the plastic, and it's just not an ideal situation.
How do you make your coffee?
Yes.
What's your favorite way?
So I just have a French press. I just have a stainless steel French press and use organic coffee, and yeah, I have a glass, mug, a glass coffee mug.
Yeah.
That's what I do.
Yeah, I mean, French press is a great way to make coffee that augments the exposure to the oils, the antioxidants. There is some thought that, or there's been some research suggesting that for some people, French press could raise cholesterol levels because of the exposure to certain types of terpenes in coffee, like uh, Howell and Cafestol. So some people are sensitive to that. And in those cases, it's better to use a pour over method with a filter because the filter is actually going to filter out those particular substances that can raise the cholesterol while still getting the benefit of the antioxidants. And certainly you get better contact with the beans in a pour over method than with like a K cup or like a rapid production method.
Yeah. Yeah. And I know my dad used to have a Chemex setup with like the little glass bottle with the filter and the catch below it. And but he would use a stainless steel filter, which probably what's not going to filter out those cholesterol raising particles. But yeah, I have that as like my little backup system. So I inherited that from him. But yeah, so let's talk a little bit more about coffee. And so are there any issues with microplastics in coffee at all? As far as,
It's really more the way you make the coffee is the biggest risk and exposure to microplastics is more the behaviors that go around like how you get your coffee if you're picking up at a coffee shop or how you're making it at home with the K cups. But if you're making it in the ways that we talked about, like a French press and like, steel French press, then you're not getting exposed to those microplastics or anything that's made out of glass. And those are great ways to make coffee. And I think also you can make a better tasting cup of coffee at home than you can get at overall at a coffee shop.
yeah, I can't tolerate the coffees at Starbucks. They just taste burnt to me. They just don't not very good quality at all and not organic, so that's a problem as well. And so
That's a
you
huge problem. Yeah, I mean we didn't even mention that, but coffee is one of the top 10 most pesticide sprayed crops on the planet. So even if you're being good about it and you're avoiding exposure to microplastics, you still have to worry about exposure to pesticides if you are not drinking organic coffee. And then on top of that, mycotoxins or mold exposure from coffee beans that are lower grade that have been sitting around for a while, or like you think like you're saving money by buying a cheaper coffee, but you might actually be exchanging it for health problems down the road.
Yeah, for sure you get what you pay for, and it's so important, like you mentioned, that the to drink organic coffee, because it's just really shocking when you realize how much pesticides are sprayed on coffee and how much of those pesticides that affect your hormones. Those are the pesticides are also estrogenic, so you're
They're
just
they're
getting
neurotoxins,
yeah.
endocrine disrupting, and the other thing is a lot of pesticides act as antimicrobial agents. So they're going in and they're disrupting your gut microbiome. So everything we just talked about, like just remember this, the domino effect. The first domino is once your ecosystem is messed up, that domino falls. The next domino is your gut permeability. So you get leaky gut. And the next domino is inflammation in the body. And the next domino is insulin resistance, then weight gain, then prediabetes. And then the cycle just repeats itself. And that becomes the source of all chronic disease on the planet.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really, I think people don't realize how problematic their little morning cup of coffee is. So you created I thought it was really, really interesting when we were talking about doing the show that you had created your own line of coffee called Happy Gut Coffee. Can you talk a little about that? And
Super excited about it because one of the biggest issues I had growing up was actually, and what partly what got me into so fascinated with gut health was not only that I had IBS, but for long periods as a teenager and into my 20s, I suffered from acid reflux. And whenever I drank coffee, it just made it worse. And depending on how I drank it, an empty stomach or not empty stomach, but coffee just in general would make my stomach symptoms much worse, or my IBS. So coffee is part of our culture, right? And it was part of my culture growing up as a Cuban American. It's very big in our culture, and I just thought like I've always wanted to have something that would be a food-based product that would be good for people, that would be good for the gut. And so I had the opportunity to work with my co-packer with the coffee and work with small farmers in South America that are using organic farming practices to create a non-toxic bean that's free of pesticides. We also tested it for heavy metals, and we had it tested for mold, mycotoxins, all free of that. And then micro roasted. And like you said, like certain commercial brands, they burn their beans. And once you burn something, you're generating what we call AGEs, advanced glycosylation end products that actually cause cellular aging. So we have a micro roasting facility that micro roasted in the lower Hudson Valley here in New York, and they roast it to perfection. We get a dark roast. The dark roast actually does two things. It lowers the acidity of the beans, and it actually takes away a lot of the bitterness, because a lot of people who have tried the coffee when I serve it just plain black ask me if I added sweetener to the coffee, and I don't. It's just the plain coffee. But when you don't have the bitterness, the sweet tones can come through. And a lot of times, if you think about it, if you're putting sugar in your coffee, it's because it's so bitter, you're putting the sweetener to hide the bitterness. So one great thing is that it lowers the bitterness, lowers the acidity, makes it much more gut friendly for anybody who suffers from heartburn, acid reflux. So many people in this country, like 60 million people, Americans, suffer from acid reflux and take acid lowering medications on a daily basis and still continue drinking the coffee that upsets their stomach. So I wanted to come out with an option that is healthier on all those fronts, but also USDA organic, free of all types of toxins, rich in polyphenols, and just really great for the gut. And that was the story behind Happy Gut Coffee, which officially launched with a Kickstarter campaign that we successfully funded at the end of November. And so we're super excited to get this out to more and more people, because it's not just like having a low acid coffee, and there are other brands out there that are doing the same, uh, but then the coffee doesn't taste great. So it's having a low acid gut friendly coffee that also people try and they love how it tastes. Then 150 million Americans drink coffee every single day. So if I can meet them where they're at and then teach them about gut health and teach them that there's another way that things could be, and learn about microplastics and how you're consuming your coffee. And if you make it at home, there are ways that you can make it healthier, ways that could be less healthy for you. I think it's like a win-win for everyone, because the number one thing that patients have always asked me when I put them on a more like an elimination diet or a cleanse is, do I have to give up my coffee?
yeah. Yeah, people ask the same thing with me too if they're doing like a detox program or the detox coffee. I'm like, no, 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 no. You can still have your coffee. I'm having my coffee. I don't care what the problem is or the consequences. Like I have to have my coffee.
The funny thing also is I learned because I'm a genetic slow metabolizer for caffeine. So I'm super caffeine sensitive. And how would you know if you're the type of person who, if you drank a cup of coffee in the evening after dinner, you won't sleep that night? Then you're a slow metabolizer. If you can have an espresso at 10 p.m. at night and then go to bed at 11 p.m. and fall asleep, you're a fast metabolizer. Well, I'm a slow metabolizer. And so even when I decided to go into the coffee, I was a bit nervous and I was thinking, well, maybe people, because I was drinking decaf at the time because I was nervous, just trying to stay away from too much caffeine. And so when I decided to do the coffee, I asked my followers, like, do you drink decaf or caffeinated? And 85% of them drink caffeinated. So I realized, okay, you can't swim against the tide. Like people want their caffeinated coffee. So when I tried it, I was nervous that it was going to make me a bit amped up. But I learned that through the dark roasting process, it also lowers the caffeine
Mm.
content a bit. And for anybody who's a slow metabolizer, and I've had a couple of people who are slow metabolizers and I've turned them on to Happy Gut Coffee, as long as you stick to just 1 cup, if you're a slow metabolizer, you're good. You don't want to go to 2 cups, you're going to start feeling a bit amped up. But 1 cup, you are good because the dark roast lowers the caffeine content. So it's not going to be as strong as like when you go out and get a commercial coffee that is just, chock full of caffeine.
So this episode is brought to you today by Purity Woods Skincare. So if you care about your health and longevity, which let's face it, if you're listening to this show right now, you probably do, then I assume you know to watch what you eat, get plenty of exercise, and prioritize your sleep. But where I notice so many of my health conscious peers can drop the ball, so to speak, is when it comes to their personal care products. So truly, folks, we all need to be reading the ingredients list on any product that we're putting on our skin. It absorbs directly into your bloodstream. But how often do you buy skincare products because they're labeled as clean or organic, or they have organic in the name of the product, or they say paraben free, only to find out that there's a ton of toxic ingredients in them that are damaging to your skin, your body, and your hormones? Why is it so hard to find skincare products that are truly 100% USDA organic certified? So that's why I use and recommend Purity Woods Skincare. So Purity Woods' mission is to provide people with the cleanest and most effective healthy aging and longevity products available. And all of their products are USDA certified organic, non-GMO, free of anything artificial, free of toxic preservatives and synthetic additives like pesticides, chemical fertilizers, dyes, parabens, and of course, it's cruelty-free and never tested on animals. Purity Woods' best-selling product, the age-defying Dream Cream, has been flying off the shelves for a reason. So this formulation includes red maple leaf extract, along with collagen-boosting ingredients like organic mango seed butter and organic Indian gooseberry, which, if you don't know, it's the most antioxidant-rich fruit on earth. And as you know, I'm also a big research geek, and in recent years, there's been some genuinely fascinating science coming out of the University of Rhode Island about red maple leaf extract for the skin. So this little-known skincare ingredient has been shown to block the breakdown of elastin, the key protein in your skin that allows it to stretch and remain firm. So some researchers are even calling this ingredient a potential plant-based Botox, so to speak. So if you're ready to detox your skin routine of all those hormone disrupting synthetic chemicals that plague 99% of the skincare industry, but you don't want to compromise on results, I highly recommend that you try out Purity Woods Age Defying Dream Cream. And if you don't agree that it's the best skincare you've ever used, your purchase is protected by their really generous 60-day happiness guarantee. But honestly, I've never seen a skincare product of this quality at this reasonable of a price point. And thankfully, the good people at Purity Woods have a special discount code specifically for my listeners. So you can try it yourself for 27% off today. Just go to puritywoods.com/Wendy or enter Wendy at checkout. So that's woods.com/Wendy, or enter Wendy at checkout. Yeah, that's interesting about the dark roast helping with the caffeine. I thought I had never heard that before. But yeah, and I think the dark roast also taste a lot better. They taste more chocolatey, more
It's got a more
caramelized.
more complex, like it allows for a lot of the flavor profile in the beans to come out. Like you get chocolate, cinnamon, vanilla, a little bit of a nutty finish. It's really nice.
Yeah, but I like the dark roast, but not too dark. No, not burnt. Okay,
Exactly.
I don't understand it. Any kind of, I don't know, everywhere you go that's not outside your home, and it's not like a nice coffee shop, almost every other place they serve the coffee. It's burnt and it's so super, super, super hot to hide the bad flavor profile of it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, and then your stomach is upset
yeah.
afterwards.
Yeah, I have that issue too. I hadn't made that correlation, but I do. I'll get a cup of coffee and my stomach will start getting acidic, preparing for just the coffee going up to my mouth. It's like it's already prepping for it, and I'm very intuitive with my food. But yeah, but with the coffee, with the Happy Gut coffee, I don't have that at all. So you mentioned heavy metals and that you test for heavy metals. Correct? I think that's really interesting because a lot of brands don't test for heavy metals.
I got really curious about that because of the consumer reports that came out last year on dark chocolate and how a lot of the brands out there actually had higher levels of lead and cadmium than are allowed. And that was super shocking to me to hear because I was actually consuming from time to time, I would buy one of those dark chocolate brands and then I find out that it has high levels of lead. And lead is a mitochondrial toxin. Cadmium is actually associated with prostate cancer, and high cadmium levels are associated with prostate cancer that is not responsive to treatment. So getting exposed to heavy metals is not something to be taken lightly. And unfortunately, a lot of us who grew up in before the 70s or in the early 70s, when we were just, putting up regulations on taking lead out of gasoline, taking lead out of paint, but there was still dust on the roads that was covered from the exhaust of cars that was from leaded gasoline. So a lot of us growing up in that time period got exposed to lead. Cadmium is more something that people get exposed to through cigarettes from smoking, not typically through other means. So it was quite surprising, or contaminated water as well. But super surprising to me that it was found in cacao beans sourced from certain areas and in dark chocolate brands. And we wrote about this in our blog on happygutlife.com. But anybody can look this up on Consumer Reports and look up which brands are the ones they tested a bunch of brands and looked at the ones that are good and which ones are not acceptable. And I'm not sure what the follow-up is with those brands. I hope that they're checking their source for cacao beans for heavy metals. But it's something like you don't even think about these things because you're not going to taste it. It's going to taste like a delicious bar of dark chocolate. It doesn't tell you if it's contaminated with heavy metals or not.
Yeah. Yeah, I always wondered why more coffee brands don't test for cadmium. Because for me, it just seems like a really good marketing angle because for one of the biggest contaminants of coffee is cadmium. And that's kind of part of what gives us like a little bit of a kick. It gives the adrenals kind of a little boost, a little crutch almost. And that's part of one of the attractions to coffee. I think one of the stimulant attractions to coffee, but it's a huge problem, and it really just depends on where the coffee is grown. Some soils have higher cadmium levels, and the coffee beans, take that up in the soil, and then it's just present there. But yeah, I think that's brilliant that you test for the heavy metals. I think it's really important.
And I think there's a lot of these factors that we're not thinking about, like the toxins in coffee that might actually be playing a role in the crash that a lot of people feel like 2 to 3 hours after a cup of coffee, and then you think that you need another cup of coffee. As a slow metabolizer, obviously caffeine sticks around for a while, but when I used to drink regular coffee, I would get like this high and then I would come crashing down. And by 1, 2 p.m., I felt like I needed another cup of coffee to make it through the day. And now, since I've been having my Happy Gut coffee, just 1 cup in the morning, I never feel too high. I never feel a crash. And it does make me wonder if it's not just the caffeine, is it other toxins in the coffee that could be playing a role in, the mental slowness that comes, the physical fatigue when you crash afterwards. You have to think also about the sugar. Like, I don't put any sugar in my coffee, but if you go out and pick up a coffee and some of the main commercial brands, they are loaded with sugar. So not only do you have a caffeine high, you have a sugar high. And then you come crashing down a few hours later and heading back to the coffee shop for another shot of espresso.
Yeah, yeah, and I think there's a little plan in that. But yeah, for me, I also like to put fat in my coffee as well. I put heavy cream in my coffee because it also can blunt that adrenal kick that you get and kind of give your poor little adrenals a little bit more of a
I
break.
like
Not a
that.
total pass, but a little bit more of a break
I
from
put
the.
a I put a collagen powder in so I like using coffee as a vehicle to take in other good things. So I like the fat is an appetite suppressant. Also collagen powder. In my coffee, I also put something called SBIs. They're serum-derived bovine immunoglobulins. They're basically immunoglobulins that bind toxins in the gut. And I just, in general, like to use that as a regular maintenance routine for my gut because they protect me against, even like when eating out and you just don't know what you get exposed to.
Is that kind of similar to colostrum or the
It's
ingredients
very
in
similar to
colostrum?
colostrum. The difference is that certain people like myself who have a dairy sensitivity might not do well with colostrum, but because SBIs don't have any dairy in them, they're really good for anybody who might have any type of dairy sensitivity. It's better to use SBIs than to use colostrum. You're getting the same benefits. The SBIs bind toxins, they bind endotoxin in the gut, for example, and they also help stimulate the gut border to seal itself. So they help with leaky gut and they just help with promoting a healthier gut microbiome in general.
Yeah, I take colostrum on a regular basis just because the immune boosting benefits and the gut healing benefits. But yeah, that's great about having, just going straight to the SBI is that active ingredient that helps that gut healing as well for those that can't do
Yeah,
dairy.
exactly. And
Yeah.
do you add your colostrum to your coffee, or have you ever
I
tried that?
I don't. I guess I worry about maybe the heat kind of harming the stuff in the colostrum. So I like it, a straight. I don't want to put anything in it. I just want heavy cream and stevia in my coffee, and I'm have a happy camper. And I'm
And you're good to go.
unhappy, very unhappy if I don't have heavy cream. But yeah, why don't you
As
tell
long as
us?
it's grass-fed, it's good.
Yes, yes, I have an amazing source here in Houston. So why don't you tell us a little bit about where we can learn more about your Happy Gut coffee?
Super simple. Just go to happygutcoffee.com and it'll take you straight to the website. You can learn more about it there. You can learn about how we source it and some of the properties of the coffee. You can also actually look at our testing sheets are on the website so you can see what types of third-party testing we've done for the coffee to make sure that it's free of toxins and yeah, and through there you can also learn more about me, my story, and our a lot of free content that we produce, blog posts. We've written a lot of blog posts on microplastics, on the benefits of coffee, on all sorts of topics related to coffee drinking and gut health, and also just gut health in general.
Great. Well, Vincent, thank you so much for coming on the show. And I love doing this show because I really do want people to rethink their coffee and their coffee intake and how they're making it and what they're really consuming in their cup. Because my father was a coffee freak. He used to roast his own coffee beans and buy green coffee beans from all over the world. So I've been definitely have gotten an education from him on that. And I love buying like little micro roast coffees from little farms all over the world. And that's kind of a trendy thing because, they just love their coffee. So I love that you're, participating in that and, finding these amazing little farms and that are organic and doing these little micro roasts of these special beans.
Thank you so much. Yeah, it's just brought a lot of joy to me, especially when you see somebody when you give somebody something that tastes good and you know it's good for their health, and you see the smile on their face and the surprise when they're like, "Wow, this is no acid. Like it's so smooth." That brings me a lot of joy.
Okay, wonderful. Well, everyone, go check out the coffee, happygutcoffee.com. And Vincent, again, thanks so much for coming on the show. And everyone, thanks for tuning in every week to the Myers Detox Podcast. I'm Dr. Wendy Myers, and I love doing this show because I love just helping you pick apart every little aspect of your life. And I know it's kind of a pain, but you really need to rethink everything that you're doing in your life, what you're putting in your body, every bite that you're eating, and just, over time, slowly but surely, kind of, upgrading what it is that you're doing and rethinking everything and making better choices. And so this show is no different. So I hope that made some difference for you in helping to upgrade your coffee experience. So thanks for tuning in.
The Myers Detox Podcast is created and hosted by Wendy Myers. This podcast is for information purposes only. Statements and views expressed on this podcast are not medical advice. This podcast, including Wendy Myers and the producers, disclaim responsibility for any possible adverse effects from the use of information contained herein. Opinions of guests are their own, and this podcast does not endorse or accept responsibility for statements made by guests. This podcast does not make any representations or warranties about guest qualifications or credibility. Individuals on this podcast may have direct or indirect financial interest in products or services referred to herein. If you think you have a medical problem, consult a licensed physician.